Hi, I'm Francesca.
And I'm Doug.
Have you ever wondered how your body turns the food you eat into energy?
Or even how you are able to get so much energy eating pasta?
Well, cellular
Cellular respiration is the reason behind this.
And today, we're going to take a trip to our bakery to explore this process a little more. Cellular respiration is divided into 4 steps.
Glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain.
Before we get started, let's take a look at what cellular respiration actually is. Cellular respiration is the process in which organisms consume and break down glucose to create energy in the form of ATP.
In order to make energy, you need ingredients. They're called reactants in scientific terms. Think of it as a recipe. You need eggs, milk, and flour to make a cake. However, in this case, we need glucose and oxygen to make energy, water, and carbon dioxide.
Oh, and here's the equation in case you were curious.
Glycolysis is the first step of cellular respiration. It occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. It occurs with and without the presence of oxygen. The purpose of it is to break down glucose, and it produces a net of 2 ATP.
In the cytoplasm, 2 ATP are used to help split glucose into 2 pyruvates. Because the break of chemical bonds releases energy, glycolysis is able to release 4 total ATP. However, recall that it took 2 ATP to produce these 4 ATP. So, we get a net of 2 ATP from glycolysis. Glycolysis also produces 2 electron carriers called NADH, and again, 2 pyruvate molecules. These are the products of glycolysis. Let's move on to the next step.
Before reaching the Krebs cycle, the pyruvates created in the glycolysis step undergo a process called pyruvate oxidation. Now I must advise, before we go any further, the next few steps will only occur if oxygen is present in the cell. If oxygen isn't present, then the cell will undergo anaerobic respiration. In this process, pyruvates are converted to acetyl-CoA, a 2-carbon molecule attached to a coenzyme. In order to create an acetyl-CoA molecule, the bond between the second and third carbon must break. When the bonds break, electrons are released. The electrons get picked up by electron carriers, NAD+. With the addition of the electrons, the carrier becomes NADH. The carbon molecule that was released later bonds with oxygen and gets released from our bodies. That's the air we breathe out.
To recap, 2 acetyl-CoA molecules are created, 2 carbon dioxide molecules are created, and 2 NADH carriers are produced in the step.
Step 3 is the Krebs cycle, which occurs in the mitochondrial matrix of the cell. Using the acetyl-CoA molecules from pyruvate oxidation, the Krebs cycle is able to produce numerous electrons, essential for producing ATP in the electron transport chain. For every acetyl-CoA molecule that enters the Krebs cycle, 2 CO2, 3 NADH, 1 ATP, and 1 FADH2 is produced. Recall that pyruvate oxidation produced 2 acetyl-CoA molecules. So, the products per 1 round of the Krebs cycle will double. That means the Krebs cycle produces 4 CO2, 6 NADH, 2 ATP, and 2 FADH2 per glucose molecule. NADH and FADH2 are the essential electron carriers needed for the electron transport chain. Let's see what they do.
The fourth and final step of cellular respiration is the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain is located in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Let's take a closer look at it. Welcome to the electron transport chain. This is where all the magic happens. As you can see, there are 4 complexes going through the membrane. The electron carriers NADH and FADH2 drop their electrons off at the first 2 complexes. The electrons provide energy to the complexes. This energy allows for the complexes to actively transport hydrogen atoms into the inner membrane space. The active transportation creates a concentration gradient. Once there's an abundance of hydrogen atoms in the inner membrane space, the protons travel to ATP synthase. Just a quick note, the electron carriers continue to drop electrons off. This all happens simultaneously. Finally, the ATP synthase twists and creates a phosphate group that attaches to ADP to create ATP.
Overall, the electron transport chain alone creates a whopping 34 ATP. It also produces water since oxygen is the last electron acceptor in the system, and comes and picks up lingering hydrogen ions from the matrix. This is why you sweat after a long run. To sum up, cellular respiration creates energy, water, and carbon dioxide, all from sugar and oxygen. How sweet is that? Haha!
Hopefully next time you run a marathon and you remember why you should eat some pasta.
Well, that's all from the Bakery Buddies, and we wish you the sweetest learning.